I'm 73 years old, and I've been carrying this family on my shoulders my whole life. 73 years of giving everything, and this is how they repay me. Mom, stay on the farm. Someone has to look after the garden, my son John said this morning with that fake smile he inherited from his wife. Elizabeth stood next to him in her new red dress, looking at me like I was hired help. And her mother, Margaret, in expensive sunglasses, didn't even look up from her phone, as if I didn't exist. "It's just for a week, Mrs. Smith." "You understand?" she mumbled without lifting her head. "Just for a week, as if planting and watering were a game, as if these 73 years were all for nothing." I watched them get in the car, suitcases full of clothes I had washed and ironed, towels I had folded, shoes I had cleaned. They went to the coast to spend the money this land produces, while I stayed here under the blazing sun, my hands in the soil that they believe belongs to them. But then, when the dust from their car settled and silence filled the empty house, the kitchen phone rang, a sound that cut through the air like a knife. It was the bank. "Mrs. Smith, we need to confirm a few urgent transactions," said the voice on the other end. My heart froze, not from fear, but from something deeper, a suspicion that had been growing inside me like a weed. "What transactions?" I asked, even though I already knew I wouldn't like the answer. "Your son, John, tried to transfer $50,000 this morning, and there were also attempts to change ownership on several accounts. Since you are the primary account holder, we need your permission." $50,000, the money we saved from selling the livestock last month. Money meant to fix the roof, for my blood pressure medication, to keep the farm running. "I don't authorize anything," I said in a voice I barely recognized. "Block everything right now." I hung up and stood in that kitchen, where I had cooked thousands of meals for a family that now saw me as a nuisance. The yellow walls I painted 10 years ago now seemed like silent witnesses to everything I had endured in quiet. That evening, as I was watering the tomatoes and lettuce they would eat when they returned, my phone vibrated. It was John. "Mom, what's wrong with the cards? We can't withdraw a single cent. We can't pay for anything." His voice was desperate, almost hysterical. "We're stuck at this hotel. We can't even pay the bill. What did you do?" What did I do? As if protecting my own money was a crime, as if I didn't have the right to manage what was rightfully mine. "I did what I had to, son." "But Mom, it's urgent. We need the money." Urgent. Their beach vacation is urgent, but my medication, the leaky roof over my bed, the expenses for the farm that feeds this entire family, no. "The only thing that's urgent here, John, is that I finally opened my eyes," I said, ending the call. "I worked my whole life for this family. I sacrificed my dreams, my youth, my health, and now I found out they plan to take everything I had left. But there's something they don't know. Something I found out 3 days ago when my neighbor Jane came over for coffee and told me what she heard in town. Something that changes everything. 3 days before that, Jane came to visit, just as she always does. She always brings her favorite white ceramic cup with flowers, the one I gave her last year. She sat in the rocking chair on the porch, the same one where my late husband used to read his newspapers. "Eleanor," she said in that quiet voice she uses when she wants to tell me something important, "I need to tell you something I heard in town." I was peeling oranges for juice, but something in her tone made me stop. "What is it, Jane?" She looked at the road as if she was afraid someone might be listening. "Yesterday, I was at Mr. Tobias's notary office. I went to update the documents for my property, remember? And while I was waiting, I overheard Elizabeth on the phone. My heart beat faster. Elizabeth at the notary's office. It couldn't be a coincidence. She was talking to someone about selling the farm, Eleanor. She said they already have a buyer and just needed to convince you to sign some papers, which they would tell you were for an insurance renewal. The oranges rolled all over the floor. My hands shook like leaves in the wind. Are you sure you didn't mishear? As sure as my name is Jane, and that's not all. She also mentioned they needed to transfer all the bank accounts to John's name. She said it would be easier for a woman your age. And then, Eleanor, I heard something that made my blood run cold. She said that after the sale they would take you to a nursing home in the city, that they had already put money aside for it. A nursing home. As if I were old, useless furniture. As if these 73 years meant nothing. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the leaky ceiling, and thought about every strange conversation from the past few months. How Elizabeth and Margaret would stop talking when I entered the room, their whispered phone calls, the papers they would quickly hide when I came near. I remembered 6 months ago when Elizabeth brought that green folder, insisting I sign some insurance documents. I signed them without reading, trusting them like a fool. What was in those papers? Now it all made sense. John's persistence when he asked me to go to the bank to update my information. The constant pressure to give them access to my accounts, in case something happens to me. Margaret's frequent visits. She, who had barely spoken to me before, now came with store-bought pastries and fake smiles. I got up before dawn and walked all over the farm. I touched every tree I had planted. The avocados I planted when John was 10, the mango trees that grew with him, the garden where I taught my granddaughter to identify plants, until Elizabeth decided it was too dangerous to bring her here. This land is soaked with my footsteps. My sweat has watered every furrow. My tears have nurtured every seed, and they wanted to take it from me like taking a toy from a child. The next day, early in the morning, I went to Jane's house. Her chickens were clucking in the yard and the chimney smelled of burning wood. I needed to think. I needed a place where I could feel safe. Her little kitchen always smells of cinnamon and fresh brewed coffee. Jane, I think I need to do something before it's too late, I said. She poured me coffee in that flowered cup and sat across from me. Her eyes, the color of old honey, looked at me with the kind of understanding that only comes from years of true friendship. What do you need, Eleanor? I need to go to the bank and to a lawyer today. But first, I need you to help me look through all the papers I've signed recently. We went back to my house and sat at the dining table. I took out all the folders, all the documents I had saved, not fully understanding them. Jane's eyesight is better than mine, and she knows how to read small print. Eleanor, she said, her voice trembling after an hour of looking them over, these papers you signed last month give John the right to sell the property on your behalf. My world was shaking. Without knowing it, I had signed my own death warrant. And this one, she said, pointing to another page, gives him full access to all your bank accounts. Eleanor, with these papers, they can do whatever they want with you. I cried. For the first time in years, I cried like a child. I cried for my naivety, for my blind trust, for raising a son capable of such betrayal. But the tears dried quickly. In their place came something I hadn't felt in a long time. Anger. A pure, clear anger that filled me with an energy I thought I had lost. We went to the bank together. There, the young manager, who had a worried look on her face, explained everything John had tried to do in the last 2 months. Loan applications using the farm as collateral, attempts to change the authorized signatures, requests for copies of all my statements. Fortunately, Mrs. Smith, she said. "You gave us clear instructions many years ago not to authorize anything without your personal presence. Your son seemed very upset when we told him we had to speak with you first. He even came in last week with a lawyer, insisting that he had a legal right. Of course, he was upset. His plan to rob me was falling apart because of one detail he had forgotten. Many years ago, when my husband passed away, I was a little bit smarter. I put those restrictions in place in case I ever lost my memory." "What can I do to fully protect myself?" I asked. "Cancel all the powers of attorney you've given, change all your passwords, and set new restrictions. And if you want my advice, Mrs. Smith, do it today." Then we went to see the lawyer, Mr. Davis, an elderly man who inspired trust at first sight. "Mrs. Smith, what you're telling me is very serious, but it can be fixed. Those documents you signed can be annulled. You were under emotional duress and you did not have independent legal representation." He explained my rights and showed me how to protect my property. I signed new documents, changed all the authorizations, and placed legal locks that neither John, his wife, nor her mother could break. "What if they try to force me to sign something?" I asked. "These documents will protect you, Mrs. Smith. No one can force you to do anything with your own property. If they try, it is called coercion, and it's a crime. I have also notified the bank and the notary. Any document they try to present with your signature will be verified directly with you." I returned home that evening feeling different, as if I had woken up from a long, confusing dream. The farm looked the same green mountains in the background, the same endless sky, the same trees I had planted with my own hands for decades. But I was no longer the same woman who had left the house that morning. For the first time in many months, maybe even years, I felt like I was in control of my own life. They arrived at sunset on the third day, like a storm approaching from afar. John's car kicked up a cloud of dust that took a few minutes to settle. I was watering the flowers in the garden, but I dropped the hose and sat in the rocking chair on the porch to wait for them. They got out of the car like actors in a badly rehearsed play. First came John with the face of a mischievous child, the one he had when his father caught him misbehaving. Then Elizabeth in a wrinkled green dress with her hair a mess, and finally, Margaret, adjusting her sunglasses even though the sun was already setting. None of them looked at me. They just stood there, waiting for me to speak first, as if I owed them something. The silence stretched so long that even the cicadas fell quiet. "Well," I finally said, without getting up from the chair. John walked toward me first. His steps were heavy on the wooden planks his father had laid 15 years ago. "Mom, we need to talk." Talk. He sat on the step, in the same position he used as a child when he wanted me to forgive him. But he was 42 now, and his childish tricks didn't work on me anymore. "I don't understand what happened. Why did you do this?" "You really don't understand, John." Elizabeth came closer on those heels that had no place on a farm and made her walk like a duck. "Mother-in-law, I think there's been a misunderstanding. We never meant to hurt you." I looked her straight in the eyes. They were puffy. She had probably been crying on the way, but these weren't tears of remorse, but of desperation at losing. "A misunderstanding? Is that what you call a plan to sell my house behind my back? We just wanted what was best for you." Margaret stayed by the car as if ready to flee at any moment, but her voice carried clearly, "Eleanor, a woman your age shouldn't live alone in such a secluded place. It's dangerous." I got up from the rocking chair for the first time since they arrived. My legs felt firm, strong, as if they had regained a power I had forgotten. "Dangerous? You know what's dangerous, Margaret?" trusting a family that plans to rob you, signing papers without looking because you believe your own son would never betray you. John also stood up. In his eyes, I saw something I hadn't seen before. Fear. Fear that his plan had completely failed. Mom, the papers you signed were just for your protection, in case something happens to you so we can help. Protect me? By calling me crazy and telling everyone in town I'm losing my memory? The color drained from his face. He didn't know I had overheard that conversation last week when they thought I was asleep. Yes, you did. You told Mr. Tobias that I was starting to have dementia, that I sometimes didn't remember things, and that you needed to have legal control over my decisions. Elizabeth stepped back. Her heels sank into the soft garden soil. John, let's go. She's not well. I'm not leaving. This is my mom, and I'll fix everything. What exactly are you going to fix? I asked. My voice was louder than I expected. Fix this misunderstanding. Make you understand that everything we did was for you. I stepped down from the porch and walked right up to him. John is tall, he always has been, but in that moment, I felt taller than him. You want me to understand? Great. Then explain why you had a buyer for the farm. Explain why you already set aside money for a nursing home. Explain why Elizabeth was looking up apartment prices in the city. Every word I spoke was a blow. I watched them shrink, looking for excuses they no longer had. Mom, Enough with the lies. I've heard enough. Margaret finally walked up with the same fake elegance she saved for special occasions. Eleanor, be reasonable. You need us more than you think. Who will take care of you when you get sick? Who will handle the farm business? I will take care of myself just as I have for 73 years. And as for the farm business, I have some news for you. I went back to the porch and pulled the papers I had signed this morning with Mr. Davis out of my bag. Yesterday, I signed a new will. Everything I own will go to a foundation that helps women in difficult situations. Not a cent, not a single foot of this land will go to you. The silence that followed was different. It was the silence of defeat, of shattered plans, of dreams of easy money that vanished like morning dew. John sat down on the step again, but this time not as a child seeking forgiveness. He sat as a man who finally understood the consequences of his actions. Mom, you can't do this. I'm your only son. Being my only son gave you rights, John, but it also came with responsibilities, and you chose to betray me instead of taking care of me. Elizabeth stopped crying. Now she looked at me with pure fury, which finally revealed her true face. She's crazy. She's lost her mind. John, do something. What can I do? I don't know, but you can't let her take everything from us. No one is taking anything from you, I said calmly. You are simply losing what was never yours. The sun had finally set. The first stars began to appear in the purple sky. It was time for them to leave. Go, I told them. This house is no longer yours. John looked at me as if he didn't understand my words, as if it were impossible for his mother, the woman who had wiped his scraped knees and cooked his favorite meals for 40 years, to tell him to go. Mom, you can't be serious. I have never been more serious in my life. Elizabeth came closer with the desperation of a cornered animal. Mother-in-law, think carefully. You have no one without us. What will you do when you get sick? When you need help? I will do the same thing I've always done. Solve my own problems. But you're 73. And you're 35, but you act like you're 5. Age is not an excuse for helplessness, Elizabeth. Margaret was already in the car, probably deciding the battle was lost, but she shouted from the window, Eleanor, this won't stand. We have legal rights. The papers you signed give us power. Those papers? I pulled the folder I was carrying out of my bag. Do you mean these papers? which are already annulled, or these which prove you coerced me into signing them without a lawyer?" Her face contorted. Even from a distance, I could see reality hit her. "That's impossible. Those documents are valid." They were valid until Mr. Davis proved there was emotional coercion. Turns out the law protects the elderly from cruel children. Who would have thought? I walked into the house and turned off the lights, one by one. Tomorrow will be a new day, full of work, projects, women who need help and hope. And I will be ready, because I finally understood. True strength is the right to be yourself.